Here we're going to talk about the power law of exponents, and then we're also going to talk about negative exponents. First of all, this one tells us that we can keep the same base. You can multiply any exponents that are powers together as a rule to get our answer. Look at what this means. If we expand it, this is b squared written out 3 times. Each of those squares is also written out 2 times. So if we add all these together, there's where we come up with our 6. The rule tells us that we can multiply these and come up with our answer. So we basically are expanding twice. Same rule of distributive property that we've always used. To get rid of parentheses, we're going to multiply. So if we look at our answer, we're going to write one of these out in expanded form. This is x to the third power. So if we multiply it out, we have x to the third written 3 times. But we also have each of those written out also 3 times. And we can see we get x to the 9th. Same thing we would get if we multiply our exponents together. So we can use that rule each time. Here we have a 5 and 2, which is m to the 10th. The numbers work the same way. Just remember, the numerical form means to go ahead and put it in the calculator and figure out your answer. So if we multiply this, we have 3 times 2 is 6. To have 5 to the 6th power, put it in the calculator. We have 15,625. Pay attention when there's a negative. We need to be extremely careful. Take a little bit more time when we're dealing with the negative. Because here we end up with 2 times 3, 3 times 4. We have a negative 2 that we have to keep in parentheses. 3 times 4 is 12. Then we can multiply it out. So we can take our calculators and we can multiply, keeping the negative in parentheses. Negative 2 to the 12th power, which is 4,096. So be very careful when we're dealing with the negative. And there we have again when a negative is in parentheses. We've got an exponent, we have to keep it there. When we're raising a product to a power, this means that we have things in parentheses to that power. This power applies to everything inside. You can see when we expand, it's 2b written out 3 times. That's 3 2's, 3 b's. It applies to both of them. 2 to the third is 8, and we keep b to the third because as it is, we don't know what b is. So we have to follow every single one. The exponent has to apply. So these are like an understood one. B to the first, here to the 3rd power. Think about you're doing distributive property for each one of these. So for any numbers a and b, raise each factor to that exponent. And you can see the example here. This one's incorrect. Okay, if it's an addition, it doesn't go to each one. We have to apply this to the whole part. You have to split it up exactly the same. So if it's addition or subtraction in parentheses, then we have to actually write that number out, whatever's in there. We have to write that whole factor out twice. Then we can simplify. Those are both 7, and 7 squared is 49. So be careful when you're doing addition subtraction that we notice that. Also, if the factors have parentheses or have exponents, then theirs must be multiplied. Also, same distributive property. Here, if we have x to the 7th and y to the 5th here to the 3rd power, this applies to both. 7 times 3 is 21. 5 times 3 is 15. Distributive property applies to both. Understand this is negative 5 to the 1st power, x to the 4th, and all of that is raised to the 2nd power. So then we have 1 times 2, negative 5 squared, 4 times 2 is 8, and 5 times 5 is 25. Because we have a negative times itself, it can give us a positive. Okay, raising a quotient to the power, same thing. If we have any number where b is not 0, because that would make it make it undefined for the whole thing, so the bottom cannot be 0. But we're going to do the same distributive property. This is x to the first, 5 to the first. Multiply times each one. So we have x squared on top, 5 squared on bottom. We have x squared over 25. It doesn't matter how many are involved in parentheses. Here, numbers, letters, however many that you want. We're going to multiply this times everything that's in parentheses. And so here we have 3x to the 5th power over 4y to the 5th to the 5th power. So we're going to multiply these together. So we end up with 3 to the 5th. 5 times 2 is 10. On the bottom, we have 4 to the 1st. So 1 times 5 is 5. We have y to the 5th. 5 times 5 is 25. And then we can simplify the number parts if we're asked to. So we have 3 to the 5th is 243. X to the 10th up here. And 4 to the 5th is 1024. Y to the 25th on the bottom. And we can leave that fraction if it can't be simplified. We can leave it in that form. And so that would be our multiplying using powers to a power rule. Just to finish these last two, so you can have these as examples. 5 to the 3rd on top. 4 times 3 is 12. So we have 125 over a to the 12th. And 13, applying the 2 to both, we have 3 squared, a to the 8th. And on the bottom, we have b to the 3rd, so 3 times 2 is 6. 3 squared is 9, 9a to the 8th over b to the 6th. And then you can use that to finish your worksheet.